The woman noticed him staring and raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk on her lips. "Humans tend to be less than graceful in zero gravity," she said, her voice carrying a melodic cadence that somehow made the words both teasing and comforting. Elias flailed awkwardly, bumping into a glowing panel that sparked faintly at his touch. That was intentional. I was testing kinetic control. Very scientific," he stammered. She tilted her head, amused. "Kinetic control. Humans usually just crash into walls and call it research." Elias twitched, but managed a sheepish grin. The tension in the chamber lightened slightly by her soft laughter, which echoed off the pulsating walls like music. Hours passed, and Elias realized that humor wasn't just a distraction. It was a survival tool. The floating nutrient capsules meant for meals hovered teasingly in the low gravity, occasionally colliding in bursts of glowing particles. Elias caught one just before it splattered onto his shoulder. "I call this experimental cuisine," he said. "Adds flavor to existential dread." The woman rolled her eyes, but the corner of her lips curved into a soft laugh, and Elias felt a fragile thread of camaraderie forming. It was absurd, it was silly, and yet it was exactly what they needed to keep the creeping fear at bay. As time went on, Elias began to notice her skills more clearly. She navigated the chamber with effortless precision, manipulating alien technology and bypassing security systems with a fluid ease that left him breathless. Every teasing remark or amused glance hinted at centuries of experience and command. Still, humor persisted between them. Elias poked fun at his own mistakes, like tripping over invisible supports or fumbling with the alien consoles, and she responded with soft chuckles or playful jabs. What started as small jokes became a shared rhythm, a bond threading between human and alien in the strangest of circumstances. One chaotic morning, Elias attempted a makeshift escape after spotting a narrow maintenance hatch above the chamber. His plan, improvised and poorly executed, resulted in him bumping into walls, floating into panels, and accidentally activating a holographic map that projected the vessel's interior in miniature above their heads. She watched him with a mixture of amusement and patience. "Humans really do have a talent for creating chaos out of nothing," she said, her voice melodic. Elias landed, somewhat gracefully, on a glowing platform, grinning. "I like to call it chaos with flair." She shook her head, laughing, her silver hair floating in the zero-gravity environment like liquid light. Evenings were quieter, though never completely still. Elias perched on a floating platform, tracing holographic constellations mapped across the chamber ceiling, alien galaxies with names he could barely pronounce. Occasionally, she would join him, humming soft, resonant notes that seemed to interact with the energy in the chamber. They exchanged stories, absurd hypotheticals, and playful arguments about alien technology or customs. At one point, Elias asked if the aliens had pets, imagining tiny, glowing creatures zipping through corridors. She deadpanned, "Yes, and they bite humans for fun, mostly the ones who touch buttons they shouldn't." They laughed, and for a moment the fear of captivity faded into the shared absurdity of it all. By the end of that first chapter of their confinement, Elias sensed that things had shifted subtly. Humor had become more than a shield. It was a bridge, a private orbit of understanding between them. He began to anticipate her movements, to trust her guidance, and she allowed herself small glimpses of levity, teasing him without losing her composure. The chamber was still a cage, the alien presence still imposing, but in that strange, glowing space, a connection had begun to grow, a bond that might just be strong enough to carry them through whatever awaited next. Elias had long since given up trying to make sense of the containment chamber's layout. Walls that seemed to breathe with a soft phosphorescent glow, floors that hummed with alien energy, and doors that appeared and vanished depending on who, or what, was watching made every step a calculated hazard. He floated awkwardly in the low-gravity field, limbs flailing like a child learning to swim, and muttered to himself about the futility of human balance. His companion, the silver-haired woman with the long, graceful ears, watched him with a mixture of amusement and what he guessed was patient exasperation. "You know," she said, her voice smooth with a melodic cadence, "I've seen humans try zero-gravity maneuvers before. Usually they end up in the wall." Elias twitched in midair, narrowly missing one of the chamber's pulsating conduits and replied, That's not my style. I was testing kinetic control theory, very scientific." She tilted her head, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "Kinetic control theory, huh? Is that the one where humans crash into things and call it research?" He groaned and floated past her, bumping softly against the wall with a comedic thump. Over the next few hours, Elias discovered that humor was not just a distraction, it was a survival tactic. Whenever the silence of the chamber pressed too heavily against his thoughts, he cracked a joke or made an absurd observation about the strange alien technology around them. "Do you think these things?" He gestured at a panel of iridescent buttons that shimmered with unknown energy. "Are more decorative, or are they actively plotting our demise?" She let out a soft laugh, her long ears twitching slightly as if in response to the sound waves he barely noticed. "A little of both," she said, rolling her eyes playfully. "And judging by the way you touch everything, they've probably classified you as an immediate threat." He flinched, but the tension broke as she let out another melodic chuckle. Meals, if they could be called that, were an entirely new form of comedy. The food, nutrient capsules that dissolved in midair, releasing a faint glow as they floated, were designed for efficiency rather than taste. Elias, naturally, managed to turn even this into a spectacle. Capsules bounced off his face, hovered teasingly near the chamber ceiling, and occasionally collided mid-flight, creating small explosions of bioluminescent goo. "You're supposed to eat them, not juggle them," she said, though her voice carried a tone of amusement rather than reprimand. Elias grinned sheepishly, catching a blob of glowing matter just before it landed on his shoulder. "I call this experimental cuisine. Adds flavor to the existential dread." She rolled her eyes again but laughed softly, the sound echoing lightly against the glowing walls, a reminder that even in captivity, connection could be forged through shared absurdity. Their discussions revealed more about her than Elias initially understood. While she teased him mercilessly about his human quirks, such as insisting on tangling himself in the gravity harnesses or attempting to write in the air with his fingers, she also subtly displayed knowledge that left him quietly awed. The way she manipulated the chamber's systems, the ease with which she accessed locked consoles, and her uncanny ability to predict patrol patterns hinted at a depth of experience and authority far beyond his comprehension. He attempted to respond with his own witty quips, which often fell flat but earned her soft chuckles anyway, reinforcing the fragile bond forming between them. One particularly chaotic morning involved an attempted escape drill that Elias had initiated after noticing a narrow maintenance hatch above the main chamber. His plan, improvised and poorly executed, resulted in a series of collisions with control panels, a brief entanglement in a floating support beam, and the accidental activation of a corridor hologram that projected an entire alien city in miniature above their heads. She floated beside him, perfectly balanced, observing him like a patient teacher. "You know, humans are remarkable," she said, voice tinged with dry amusement, "for their ability to create chaos from thin air." Elias landed gracefully or otherwise on a soft glowing platform and grinned sheepishly. "Hey, that's my brand, chaos with flair." She shook her head, laughing lightly, her silver hair floating ethereally in the gravity-neutral environment. Evenings were quieter, though never entirely somber. Elias would sit on the edge of a floating platform, legs dangling, attempting to trace constellations displayed on the chamber ceiling, holographic stars mapping alien galaxies he could barely pronounce. She joined him occasionally, her long ears twitching as she hummed a soft tune, the notes resonating through the air with an almost magnetic effect. They would trade small stories, jokes that had no punchline, and hypothetical musings about human-alien diplomacy gone hilariously wrong. At one point, Elias asked if the aliens had pets, imagining a tiny, glowing creature that zipped through the corridors, and she deadpanned, "Yes, and they bite humans for sport. Mostly those who touch buttons they shouldn't." They laughed, and for a moment the fear of capture faded, replaced with the warmth of companionship, the kind that could survive even in a vessel designed to suppress hope. By the end of the chapter, their relationship had subtly shifted. The humor that had begun as a shield became a bridge, an unspoken agreement that they would face whatever came next together. Elias, once bumbling and uncertain, started to anticipate her movements and advice, while she allowed herself small glimpses of levity, teasing him without masking the sharp intelligence and authority that simmered beneath her calm exterior. The chamber was still a cage, the alien presence still omnipresent, but they had created a private orbit of laughter, trust, and connection amidst the machinery and glowing walls, a fragile sanctuary in a hostile, incomprehensible environment. And though neither could fully articulate it, both sensed that this partnership, strange, humorous, and utterly improbable, would define the next stage of their journey, setting the stage for revelations neither of them had yet dared to imagine. Elias floated in the corridor, blinking at the subtle glow of alien glyphs etched into the walls, trying to convince himself that this was all part of some particularly elaborate training exercise. The Queen, because he now knew without a shadow of doubt that she was the asterisk Queen, moved ahead of him with a fluid grace that made his attempts at stealth look like a cartoon sketch. Her silver hair shimmered in the ambient light, long ears angled slightly forward as she surveyed the patrol routes with an almost casual precision. "You're staring again," she said, her voice soft but tinged with amusement, as if reading his thoughts. Elias shifted nervously, trying to force a grin, and muttered, "I'm just appreciating your tactical elegance." She snorted lightly, a musical sound that bounced off the walls and made him self-conscious all over again. The revelation of her true identity had upended everything Elias thought he knew about the situation. What he had assumed were casual quirks, moments of teasing and playful observation, now carried a subtle weight. Every smirk, every joke, every glance was calculated with the awareness of a ruler who had faced eons of political intrigue, rebellion, and cosmic diplomacy. Yet despite the staggering disparity in status, the humor between them had not died. It had evolved. Elias still managed to fumble with alien door panels, trip over invisible support beams, and make snide remarks about alien gravity, each incident met with a soft chuckle or a raised eyebrow from the Queen, a reminder that levity could exist even in the most perilous situations. Their escape plan was simple in theory: infiltrate the command hub, override the containment field, and disappear before the patrolling drones could coordinate a counterattack. In practice, it was anything but simple. Elias found himself improvising constantly, tripping over holographic panels, accidentally triggering decoy alarms, and muttering sarcastic commentary about how humans really were the most charmingly destructive species in the galaxy. The Queen occasionally shook her head, laughing softly as she guided him through sequences of complex maneuvers. "If you survive this," she said, "I may have to adopt you as a court jester." Elias blinked, floundering midair. "Jester? I was aiming for intergalactic hero, but okay, I'll take jester as a consolation prize." They reached the command hub, a vast chamber of pulsating light and floating consoles that projected the schematics of the ship and surrounding sectors in vibrant three-dimensional holograms. The Queen moved effortlessly, fingers brushing across controls that responded to her touch with a soft hum, overriding containment fields and reprogramming drone patrols. Elias attempted to assist, pressing buttons with exaggerated caution, only to accidentally activate a holographic projection of the vessel's interior that displayed him bumping into walls repeatedly in real time. Ah, yes, she said with a melodic sigh, the human contribution, comedic relief. Elias grinned sheepishly, waving to the projection as if to acknowledge an appreciative audience. Once the containment fields were deactivated and the drones diverted, they moved to the hangar bay, where a small escape craft awaited. Elias clambered in, still flustered and muttering jokes under his breath about the aliens' excellent sense of interior design, while she secured the final system overrides with efficiency that made his head spin. Once the craft was airborne, they shared a brief moment of silence, watching the alien vessel recede in the distance. The Queen glanced at him, her long ears twitching slightly, and said, "You know, for a species so prone to chaos, humans do have their moments of brilliance." Elias felt a strange swell of pride and relief. "I'll take that as a compliment," he replied, "and as long as I don't get eaten by your people later, I think we're even." She smiled softly, a rare unguarded expression, and he realized that the bond forged in humor, fear, and absurdity had transcended rank, species, and circumstance. In the aftermath, Elias found himself changed. He no longer approached situations with the same naive certainty. He had learned the subtlety of patience, the power of improvisation, and the strange art of trusting someone entirely different from oneself. Yet he also discovered the value of humor, the unspoken thread that could bridge worlds and species alike. The Queen, for her part, had glimpsed the unpredictability and resilience of humanity, finding in Elias a companion who could meet her wit with his own brand of chaotic charm. As they navigated back to familiar space, the human and the Queen were no longer merely captives. They were partners, allies in an improbable alliance shaped by survival, laughter, and mutual respect. The stars stretched before them, glittering with distant suns and possibilities. Elias reclined in the escape craft, thinking about the absurdity of his journey, captured alongside a woman who turned out to be a queen, fumbling through alien corridors and somehow laughing through it all. He realized he had grown, not just in courage, but in understanding, empathy,